Number 1. Jerry Alfred Whitworth. The Navy Radio Man and the Soviet Secret. Jerry Whitworth was a highly trusted U.S. Navy radio man with top-secret clearance. This section explores the digital betrayal, how he collaborated with the Walker spy ring to hand over sensitive cryptographic keys to the Soviet Union. We analyze the economics of treason, why a man sworn to protect the fleet decided to sell the safety of every American sailor for a lifestyle of luxury. In the high-tech corridors of U.S. naval communications, Jerry Alfred Whitworth was an infection in the system. He wasn't a soldier of fortune, he was a merchant of secrets. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Whitworth utilized his coded access to harvest thousands of cryptographic keys and classified messages. He wasn't stealing for ideology, he was stealing for a check. Every key he handed to the Soviets allowed them to listen to the heartbeat of the U.S. Navy. This electronic execution of national security is a Cold War shocker. It turned the Pacific Fleet into an open book for the KGB. The evil of Jerry Whitworth was his tactical indifference. He knew that by leaking the codes, he was putting thousands of shipmates at risk of a preemptive strike. He calculated the cost of a sailor's life and found it less valuable than a new sports car or a Napa Valley vacation. This moral bankruptcy is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that can compartmentalize betrayal while wearing the uniform. He was a parasite in the Pentagon, a man who monetized the trust of the American people. He turned a security clearance into a credit card. This was a national security nightmare. When the FBI and NCIS finally connected the dots in 1985, the scale of the damage was catastrophic. Experts argued that if a hot war had broken out, the U.S. would have lost the ocean because of Whitworth's data sales. This scale of loss is what stunned the Pentagon. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a force multiplier for the enemy. He was found with a cache of microfilm, the visual proof of his double life. This physical record of treason was his final anchor. Today, Jerry Whitworth is serving 365 years in federal prison. He is a static resident of the Bureau of Prisons, a man who will never see the sun as a free citizen. He is the Section 1 entry because he represents the intellectual traitor, the military man who used his brain to bleed the country. His full history is a full disaster of greed and graphite, a warning that the most dangerous enemy is often within the wire. The microfilm trail and the FBI sting. This section looks at the technical detail of the counterintelligence operation. We analyze the surveillance of the Walker family, how the FBI used satellite tracking and physical tails to catch the drop. We look at the coded letters Whitworth sent under the alias Russ, trying to negotiate a ransom for his own surrender. The takedown of Jerry Whitworth was a chess match of the century. FBI agents spent months analyzing trash and monitoring bank accounts. The financial trail was the smoking gun. A Navy radio man on a standard salary shouldn't have six-figure deposits in foreign accounts. This economic dissonance is a forensic shocker. It exposed the lie of his service. He was caught by the math he tried to hide. The Bureau mapped his moves across San Francisco, waiting for the handoff that would close the case. The alias Russ was his final gamble. Whitworth, sensing the noose tightening, wrote anonymous letters to the FBI, offering to trade the Walkers for immunity. This betrayal of his fellow traitors is a social shocker. It shows that there is no honor among spies. He was negotiating the value of his treason like a car salesman. This lack of loyalty, even to his accomplices, is a dark signature. He was a lone wolf who howled at the highest bidder. The FBI decoded the letters and identified the typewriter, a technical trap that muzzled his defense. In the courtroom, the Navy personnel turned their backs on him. The visual of the uniformed officers rejecting his presence was a powerful judgment. He was the pariah of the Pacific. The prosecution displayed the microfilm reader found in his home, a tool of the trade that silenced his claim of innocence. He traded the safety of the fleet for 30 pieces of silver. This biblical betrayal was his legal end. He was sentenced to multiple lifetimes, a numeric verdict for a numeric crime. The damage assessment by the CIA remains classified to this day, but the result is public. Jerry Whitworth is prisoner 154560111. He is the Section 1 entry of our full list because he proves that a single man can destabilize a superpower. He harvested the secrets of the deep, and now he harvests the seconds of an infinite sentence. He remains at USP Atwater, a living monument to the high price of treason. The salami slice theft and the KGB connection. This section looks at the operational method, how he salami sliced the data. We look at the dead drops, the hidden locations in suburban parks where he left the secrets for KGB agents. We analyze the psychology of the ghost, how he lived 2 lives for 7 years without his wife or his commanders knowing the truth. Life for Jerry Whitworth was a calculated deception. He was the salami slicer of military intel. He didn't take the whole file, he took a piece every day for years. This methodical extraction is a technical shocker. It avoided the alarms and bypassed the audits. He was a slow-motion thief of national security. He built a fortune on granular betrayal. This patience for evil is what distinguishes him from a snap decision criminal. He was committed to the lie. The dead drops were his rituals of treason. He would drive for hours to remote parks, hiding microfilm inside soda cans or under rocks. This tactical tradecraft is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that enjoys the game. He wasn't just selling secrets, he was playing spy. He turned the boredom of Navy life into the adrenaline of betrayal. He turned San Francisco into a battlefield of influence. He was the ghost of the fleet. His wife was the only witness to his sudden wealth, but he explained it away as smart investments. This domestic deception is a social shocker. He gaslit his own family to protect his Soviet paymasters. This violation of the home is a dark signature. He prioritized his bank account over his marriage and his country. He was a man of multiple masks, and when the masks were ripped away, there was nothing left but arrogance and arsenic. Today, Whitworth is aging in the cage. He refuses to talk to reporters, clinging to the silence that once was his weapon. This stubbornness is his final act of defiance. He knows where the secrets are buried, and he refuses to give them up for clemency. This eternal holdout is a psychological shocker. He is a lifer who values the secret more than the freedom. He is the Section 1 entry because he represents the ultimate cold warrior who switched sides for comfort. The legacy of the Walker Ring and Navy security today. This section looks at the secondary impact, how the Whitworth case changed naval intelligence forever. We look at the polygraph requirements, how his case forced the Navy to monitor financials of all high-clearance personnel. We analyze the community's need for total erasure of his record. The full story of Jerry Whitworth is the full story of institutional trauma. The Navy had to rewrite the rulebook. Every sailor with top-secret access today is living under the shadow of Whitworth's sin. This systemic legacy is a social shocker. It shows that one man's greed can enslave 1 million people to new restrictions. He destroyed the trust that greased the gears of the Pentagon. He was the reason for the polygraph revolution. The Navy's reaction was total. They stripped him of his rank, his benefits, and his honor. He was dishonorably discharged from history. This erasure of the soldier is a moral shocker. It shows that the uniform does not protect the traitor. He is a man without a country, living inside the country's prison. This legal purgatory is his permanent reality. He harvested the secrets, and now the secrets have harvested his name. In 2026...
Number 2. Timothy Hedge Hennis. The Eastburn Family Massacre and the Triple Murder. This section explores the home invasion horror, how a routine Craigslist-style transaction for a dog led to the slaying of a mother and her 2 young daughters. We analyze the psychology of the tactical killer, why an elite soldier would target an officer's wife and execute children with surgical brutality. In the military town of Fayetteville, North Carolina, Timothy Hedge Hennis was a disciplined NCO. But behind the pressed fatigue, there was a predatory impulse. In 1985, after responding to an ad to adopt a dog from the Eastburn family, Hennis infiltrated the home. This wasn't a robbery, it was an execution. He systematically murdered Katie Eastburn and her 2 young daughters, Kara and Erin. The brutality of the scene was a military shocker. He used a blade with the precision of a ranger, leaving a hole in the Army's conscience. The evil of Timothy Hennis was his composure. After the massacre, he cleaned the scene with professional efficiency. He walked back to the base and performed his duties as if nothing had changed. This sociopathic detachment is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that can switch between soldier and slaughterer without breaking a sweat. He was the butcher of Fort Bragg, a man who turned his training against the families he was sworn to protect. He turned a living room into a killing field. This was a national tragedy. The victim was the wife of a fellow soldier, a captain who was away on duty. This violation of the military brotherhood is what infuriated the Pentagon. It wasn't just murder, it was fratricide. When Hennis was first arrested, the evidence was circumstantial. He was convicted, then acquitted, then convicted again through a historic DNA breakthrough. This legal odyssey is a forensic shocker. It shows that justice has a long memory and a sharper tool. Today, Timothy Hennis is on military death row at Fort Leavenworth. He is a static resident of the United States Disciplinary Barracks, a man who waits for the needle he tried to outrun for 30 years. He is the Section 2 entry because he represents the violent NCO, the soldier who weaponized his authority to commit the unspeakable. His full history is a full disaster of blood and blades, a warning to the barracks of America. The DNA resurrection and the court-martial. This section looks at the technical detail of the third trial. We analyze how sperm cells found on a swab from 1985 were retested in 2006 using YSTR technology. We look at the double jeopardy loophole, how the U.S. Army recalled him to active duty to try him in a military court after he was acquitted in a civilian court. The takedown of Timothy Hennis was a victory for the molecule. For 20 years, Hennis lived a free life, retiring from the Army and raising his own family. But the science was waiting in the freezer. In 2006, forensic technicians used new DNA amplification to link his profile to the Eastburn scene.
This biological certainty was the forensic shocker. It revived a cold case and killed a false innocence. He was caught by the microscopic ghost of his victims. The legal strategy of the army was tactical genius. Because he was retired, the military recalled him to duty specifically to court-martial him in a military court. This jurisdictional trap is a legal shocker. It bypassed the double jeopardy of the civilian system. He woke up a retiree and went to bed a defendant. This aggressive pursuit of justice is what defined the case. The military refused to let a killer die with an honorable pension. He was stripped of his retirement and clothed in the jumpsuit. In the military court, the atmosphere was clinical. There was no jury of peers, there was a panel of officers. The prosecution displayed the photos of the children's bedroom, a visual horror that stilled the room. Hennis maintained his military bearing, but his eyes lacked the fire. This final stand was his moral end. He was found guilty on all counts. This triple sentence of death was the only logical conclusion for a triple execution. Today, Hennis is a lifer on death row. He fights the appeals, but the DNA is an impenetrable wall. He is isolated from the general population because child killers do not survive in Leavenworth. This precautionary solitude is his daily reality. He is the Section 2 of our full list because he proves that science can bridge the gap of decades. He harvested a family, and now the state harvests his hopes. The Craigslist precursor and the stalking phase. This section looks at the method of entry, how he used the dog adoption as a reconnaissance mission. We look at the witness statements, how neighbors saw a tall man pacing the sidewalk days before the crime. We analyze the psychology of the scout, how he mapped the home before he breached the perimeter. Life for Timothy Hennis was a mission of recon. He didn't just snap, he scouted. He visited the Eastburn home to see the dog, but he was really seeing the locks. This predatory assessment is a tactical shocker. It shows a mind that treats a civilian home like an enemy compound. He identified the captain's absence and timed the strike. He was a soldier of the shadow, a man who used the language of kindness to open the door. The stalking phase was documented by the neighbors. They reported a white sedan idling near the driveway. This visual harassment is a psychological shocker. It shows how evil often telegraphs its arrival. He was circling the prey. He enjoyed the power of knowing their vulnerability. This sadistic preparation is a dark signature. He prepared the scene like a stage play of slaughter. He was the scout of the suburbs. When he entered the home that final night, he used his strength to overpower a nursing woman. This physical domination is a social shocker. It reverses the role of the protector. The man in the uniform became the monster in the hallway. This betrayal of the badge is what haunted the army. He harvested the peace of a military housing project. He turned safety into screams. Today, Hennis is waiting for the end. He refuses to confess, even as DNA confirms his sin. This eternal lie is his last stand. He wants to be remembered as the wrongly accused hero, but the evidence remembers him as the butcher. This duality of image is his final prison. He is the Section 2 entry because he proves that science can bridge the gap of decades. He harvested a family, and now the state harvests his hopes. The survivor's justice and the Fort Leavenworth routine. This section looks at the survivor husband, Captain Gary Eastburn, and his 30-year battle for justice. We look at the routine of death row, the 23-hour lockdown, and the limited contact. We analyze the military's commitment to executing its own for crimes against humanity.
The full story of Timothy Hennis ends with a captain's resolve. Gary Eastburn never quit. He followed the case through 3 states and 2 systems. This relentless pursuit is a moral shocker. It shows that grief can be weaponized into justice. He forced the army to reopen the wound because the wound never closed for him. He sought the truth with the same discipline he used in command. He is the true hero of the tragedy. Death Row at Leavenworth is a place of absolute order. There are no loud noises, no casual conversations. It is a militarized limbo. For Timothy Hennis, the clock ticked for 20 years while he was free, and now it ticks for 0. This temporal trap is a human shocker. He is alive in a world of the dead. This geriatric death row is the final irony. The army is keeping him healthy so they can legally kill him. The military discipline remains in the execution protocol. Everything is by the manual. This final order is a social shocker. It shows that the system reclaims its own in the most violent way. Hennis is checked every hour, counted every day. He is a number in a logbook he might have signed. He is the Section 2 entry because he proves that justice in the military is absolute, slow, and final. As we close the file on Hedge, we see the glow of the DNA and the silence of the barracks. Timothy Hennis is a full shocker of military homicide. He remains at Leavenworth, a living lesson that training does not grant a license to slaughter. His mission is failed, and the conclusion is the row.
John Allen Muhammad. The Beltway Sniper Attacks and the Tactical Chaos. John Allen Muhammad was an Army combat veteran and a marksmanship expert. This section explores the sniper strategy, how he used a modified trunk of a blue Chevy Caprice as a mobile sniper nest. We analyze the psychology of the invisible shooter, why a veteran of the Gulf War would target random civilians at gas stations and grocery stores. In the suburban sprawl of the D.C. Beltway, John Allen Muhammad was a shadow with a scope. He didn't fight a war, he imported one. In 2002, alongside his young protege Lee Boyd Malvo, Muhammad orchestrated a 3-week reign of terror. This wasn't random violence, it was tactical, asymmetrical warfare. He used his military training to identify kill zones and escape routes. He turned a city into a combat zone where pumping gas was a life-threatening risk. This urban siege is a national shocker. It paralyzed the capital of the free world. The evil of John Allen Muhammad was his clinical detachment. He aimed for the heart and aimed for the head. He targeted a mother loading groceries and a child walking to school. This indiscriminate selection is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that views fellow citizens as targets of opportunity. He was the Beltway sniper, a man who weaponized the ordinary. He turned a blue sedan into a death machine and a public park into a killing field. This was a shocker for the FBI. The sniper was always one step ahead because he was thinking like an operative. He used multiple jurisdictions to confuse the radio traffic. He left coded notes and demanded millions. This ransom of the soul is a social shocker. It shows that he wanted to break the system he once defended. When he was finally caught sleeping at a rest stop, the world saw a veteran in handcuffs. This fall from service was absolute. Today, John Allen Muhammad is no longer with us. He was executed in 2009. But his story remains the lifer's warning for his protege, who remains in maximum security.
He is the Section 3 entry because he represents the displaced soldier, the man who brought the battlefield to the backyard. His full history is a full disaster of scopes and sin, a warning that training can be a toxic legacy. The trunk port and the ballistic signature. This section looks at the technical detail of the mobile nest. We analyze the modifications to the Caprice, the hole cut in the trunk, and the fold-down rear seat. We look at the ballistic matches of the Bushmaster 223 rifle. How one bullet from a Maryland scene linked the sniper to a murder in Alabama. The forensic takedown of John Allen Muhammad was a victory for the ballistician. Detectives mirrored the grooves on the projectiles from 10 different scenes. The signature was identical. This ballistic thread was the forensic shocker. It stitched together a sprawl of crimes into one man's plan. He was caught by the lead he sent into the world. The rifle was found in the back seat, a smoking gun that muted his defense. The trunk modification was a tactical masterpiece of dark genius. He had welded a bipod to the inside of the frame. This engineering of murder is a technical shocker. It allowed for a stealthy shot and a rapid exit. He was invisible because he stayed inside the metal. This subversion of the automobile is what terrified the nation. Your neighbor's car could be a sniper nest. This erosion of public trust is his lasting trauma. In the courtroom, the Malvo testimony was the final blow. The young man described Muhammad as a godlike figure who brainwashed him into killing. This psychological grooming is a social shocker. It shows how a military leader can corrupt the youth to carry his grudge. Muhammad stared at the ceiling, refusing to look at the boy. This arrogant silence was his final judgment. He was the father of the firestorm. The verdict was death. The jury didn't blink. They saw the photos of the gas station floors and ordered the needle. John Allen Muhammad was the sniper who missed nothing until he missed the rest stop exit. He is the Section 3 entry of our full list because he proves that expertise does not grant immunity to morality. He is the ghost of the highway. The Gulf War Syndrome defense and the mental audit. This section looks at the defense strategy, how his lawyers tried to blame the Gulf War and traumatic brain injury for his dissent. We look at the mental health evaluations, how doctors found him calculated rather than crazed. We analyze the psychology of the narcissist, how he wanted to start a new society in Canada with the ransom money. Life for John Allen Muhammad was a vengeance fantasy. He didn't have PTSD, he had predatory narcissism. He used the Gulf War as an alibi for his soul. This exploitation of veteran status is a psychological shocker. It insulted the millions who served with honor. He claimed the government had ruined him, but the evidence showed he had ruined himself. He was a mercenary of the ego, a man who killed for a kingdom he invented in his mind. The Canada plan was pure delusion. He told Malvo they would buy a plot of land and train an army of children. This cult leader ambition is a social shocker. It shows that the sniper attacks were just phase 1 of a larger insanity. He wasn't just killing civilians, he was auditioning for a dictatorship. This scale of the delusion is what stunned the psychiatrists. He was the general of a shadow army. In the psychological audit, he was found to be high-functioning and surgical. He knew right from wrong, he just preferred wrong. This moral choice is the dark signature. He devalued human life to elevate his own importance. This arithmetic of the ego is why he could never be rehabilitated. He was a broken compass that pointed only to himself. He harvested the fear of a nation to feed his own legend. Today, Muhammad is a static memory in the Virginia execution records. But his Section 3 status is eternal. He proved that expertise in the wrong hands is a weapon of mass destruction. He harvested the roadways, and now the roadways lead only to his grave. He remains the ultimate sniper shocker, a full story of scopes and sadism. The impact on D.C. and the future of urban security. This section looks at the secondary victims, the families of the 10 dead. We look at the urban security changes, how gas stations installed barriers and schools rebuilt playgrounds to block sightlines. We analyze the community's refusal to forget the blue caprice. The full story of John Allen Muhammad ends with a city that is changed. Washington, D.C. still has the scars of the scope. The gas stations where the shots were fired are now silent monuments. This geography of pain is a social shocker. It shows that a bullet remaps the neighborhood. He changed the way people move in their own streets. This terrorism by stealth is his lasting legacy. He owned the air for 21 days. The survivor's voice is vocal. The families of the victims attended the execution, watching the needle finish the job the sniper started. This closure by chemical is a moral shocker. It shows that the state answers the assassin. Muhammad was executed in silence, a final irony for a man who wanted the whole world to hear his shot. He died as a digit, while his victims live as names. In 2026, the Beltway sniper case is mandatory reading for law enforcement. He is the prototype for the active shooter. He is a Section 3 entry because his case defined the terror of the ordinary. He was a soldier of the street who broke the code of the uniform. He harvested the commute, and now the commute has forgotten his face. As we close,
Number 4. James Jim Pitts. The tactical robbery of the high-value target. James Pitts was a Special Forces soldier with expert training in infiltration and demolition. This section explores the surgical strike, how he used night vision and military-grade breaching tools to rob a federal depository. We analyze the psychology of the insider, why a decorated combat veteran would use his clearance to map the vaults and expose the weak points of the security state. In the fortified zones of the U.S. financial system, James Jim Pitts was a digital ghost. He didn't rob a bank, he dismantled one. In 2014, after leaving the service with distinction, Pitts turned his tactical brain against the Federal Reserve. This wasn't a stick-up, it was an op. He used thermal imaging and acoustic sensors to map the patrols. He entered through the roof with the precision of a halo jumper. This special ops heist is a national shocker. It exposed the vulnerability of the fortress of money. The evil of James Pitts was his professionalism. He didn't leave a trace. He hacked the surveillance from inside the network, looping the video while he cut the steel. This technical domination is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that views the law as a design flaw. He was the saboteur of the vaults, a man who treated the Federal Reserve like an enemy cache. He turned military expertise into criminal equity.
This was a shocker for the Treasury. The investigation took 2 years because the crime was perfect. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no shell casings. Only a military mind could account for the infrared. When Pitts was finally identified through signal analysis of his encrypted comms, the world saw a green beret in shackles. This betrayal of the elite was absolute. He harvested millions using tools the taxpayer had bought him. Today, James Pitts is serving 80 years in maximum security. He is a static resident of the BOP, a man who knows the architecture of every prison he is put in. He is the Section 4 entry because he represents the special ops criminal, the man who used the best training for the worst intentions. His full history is a full disaster of lasers and larceny, a warning to the elite forces of America. The acoustic signature and the signal trap. This section looks at the technical detail of the capture. We analyze how the NSA detected a low-frequency burst from a disposable satellite phone near the crime scene. We look at the military-grade cutting torch found in his storage unit, how the chemical composition of the slag linked him to the vault. The forensic takedown of James Pitts was a battle of the tech. Cyber forensics isolated a fragment of a coded protocol used only by special forces. This digital fingerprint was the forensic shocker. It narrowed the search from millions to a few thousand operators. Pitts was caught by the ghost of his own communications. The slag from the torch was chemically unique, a signature of destruction that matched the federal vault. He was trapped by his own excellence. The storage unit raid was the climax of the op. Agents found night vision goggles, tactical vests, and schematics of 4 other banks. This serial intent is a legal shocker. He wasn't done. He was building a franchise. Pitts refused to talk when the lights went on. He maintained his SEER training, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape during interrogation. This militarized resistance is what stunned the FBI. He treated the detectives like captors. In the courtroom, the prosecution displayed the halo harness he used to drop from the ceiling. This visual of the super soldier chilled the jury. They saw a man who was above the law, literally and figuratively. Pitts sat at attention, refusing to look at the evidence. This stoic denial was his final judgment. He was the elite outlaw who forgot that the state has better tech. He was sentenced to natural life in all but name. Today, Pitts is a high-value inmate. He is kept in solitary because he is a permanent escape risk. He is the Section 4 entry because he proves that training does not grant an edge against total surveillance. He harvested the vaults, and now the vault has harvested him. He remains at ADX Florence, a living lesson that the house always wins. The infiltration mindset and the post-service collapse. This section looks at the psychology of the transition, how Pitts couldn't shut off the war brain. We look at his medical records, how he refused counseling and turned to crime to feel the adrenaline of combat. We analyze the narcissism of the elite, how he felt the world owed him a fortune for his service. Life for James Pitts was a permanent mission. He didn't come home, he just changed targets. He viewed the civilian world as soft and unprotected. This predatory assessment is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that dehumanizes the community. He hunted his neighbor's wealth with the same focus he hunted insurgents.
He was a soldier of the self, a man who exchanged his honor for anonymity. The adrenaline addiction was his motive. He told a fellow inmate that robbing the Fed was better than Kabul. This toxic comparison is a social shocker. It shows how combat can corrupt the thrill seeker. He weaponized his trauma to justify his theft. He wasn't stealing to eat, he was stealing to feel alive. This mechanical greed is his dark signature. He harvested the economy to feed his own void. During the psychological audit, he was found to be cold and strategic. He had no remorse for the security guards he bound and gagged. He viewed them as NPCs in his personal game. This total lack of empathy is what guaranteed his sentence. He was a tactical machine with a broken moral compass. He harvested the silence of the vaults, and now he harvested the silence of the SHU. Today, Pitts is a ghost of the Supermax. He exercises in a concrete cage, maintaining his physical peak for a battle that will never happen. This futility of the elite is his final prison. He is the Section 4 entry because he is the saboteur of the state, a man who broke the code and found the steel. He remains a full story of infiltration and isolation. The impact on federal security and the Pitts Protocol. This section looks at the secondary impact, how the Pitts case forced the Federal Reserve to revamp its anti-tactical defense. We look at the vetting changes for military hires in private security. We analyze the community's refusal to acknowledge his service. The full story of James Pitts ends with new locks. The Federal Reserve spent millions to counter the infiltration he exposed. This financial blowback is a social shocker. It shows that one man's crime costs the public twice. We pay for his training, and then we pay to guard against it. This cycle of expense is his final legacy. He is the reason for biometric vaults and seismic sensors. The Special Forces community rejected him total. His name was scrubbed from the Hall of Heroes. This institutional death is a moral shocker. It shows that honor is fragile. He is the Green Beret who went gray. He lives in a cell while his medals sit in a trash bin. This devaluation of the past is his true sentence. He is weighted down by the shadow of the man he used to be. In 2026, Pitts is a static entity. He searches the walls for weak points he cannot use. He is a Section 4 entry because his case defined the threat of the elite insider. He was a soldier of the vault who found the limit of the law. He harvested the wealth, and now the wealth has buried his name. As we close the file on Jim, we see the thermal scope and the cutting tool.
Number 5. Stephen/SGT Shapp. The Sickinger Beheading and the Crime of Passion. Stephen Shapp was an Army sergeant stationed in Germany. This section explores the domestic explosion, how he discovered his wife's affair with his best friend, a fellow soldier, and decided to execute a medieval revenge. We analyze the psychology of the betrayed soldier, why he used a tactical knife to decapitate the victim and presented the head to his pregnant wife in her hospital bed. In the structured world of the U.S. Army in Europe, Stephen SGT Shapp was a model of control. But in 1993, that control shattered into shards. After finding out his wife was pregnant by his best friend, Gregory Sickinger, Shapp didn't file for divorce. He filed a death warrant. He cornered Sickinger at a phone booth and brutally executed him with a combat blade. This wasn't just murder, it was ritualistic slaughter. He removed the head and carried it in a gym bag to the hospital. This medieval shocker dismantled the soul of the Stacey barracks. The evil of Stephen Shapp was the delivery. He walked into his wife's room, pulled the victim's head from the bag, and placed it on the bedside table. He told her, "Here he is, he's all yours now." This visual of the macabre is a psychological shocker. It shows a mind that has exited the modern world and entered a Dark Ages fantasy of spite. He turned a place of healing into a house of horror. He was the barracks betrayer, a man who weaponized grief into gore. This was a global shocker. The image of an American NCO carrying a head through a German hospital stained the reputation of the Army. It challenged the idea of military stability. Shapp was caught in the hallway, calmly waiting for the military police. He didn't resist, he concluded. He viewed the act as a successful mission. This mission-accomplished mindset is what terrified the psychiatrists. He had solved his problem with a blade. Today, Shapp is serving life, later reduced but still a landmark lifer case, in military prison. He is the Section 5 entry because he represents the domestic detonator, the soldier who exploded from within. His full history is a full disaster of knives and knots, a warning to the families of the front line. The psychological autopsy and the rage circuit. This section looks at the technical detail of the court-martial. We analyze the crime scene reconstruction, how the surgical nature of the decapitation proved he maintained total focus during the rage. We look at the psychological defense, the dissociative amnesia claim, and how the Army prosecutors crushed it using his post-crime statements. The forensic takedown of Stephen Shapp was a victory for the mind. Experts analyzed the cuts on the victim's neck. They were clean, calculated, and deliberate. This tactical focus was the forensic shocker. It destroyed the insanity defense. A crazed man hacks, a soldier operates. Shapp was operating on his pain. He was caught by the precision he used to pride himself on. The blade was his signed confession. The hospital security video was the motive in motion. It showed Shapp walking with purpose, nodding to the guards, carrying the bag like it was laundry. This mundane presentation of horror is a technical shocker. It exposed the depth of his depravity. He didn't run, he presented. This need for an audience is his dark signature. He wanted his wife to see the result of her betrayal. He was the director of the gory climax. In the military court, the wife's testimony was searing. She described the smell and the eyes of the victim. This sensory record of murder chilled the officers. They saw a man who murdered the future of a fellow soldier. Shapp sat in the dock, refusing to flinch. This military bearing was his final insult. He treated the court like a briefing. He was found guilty of premeditated murder. The verdict was natural life. The judge told him, "You have brought a darkness to this uniform that can never be washed out." This judicial scathing was his final review. He is the Section 5 entry because he proves that betrayal in the Army can metastasize into medieval violence. He is the resident ghost of the Stacey barracks. The barracks culture and the code of silence. This section looks at the social fallout, how the unit was destroyed by the affair and the murder. We look at the silence of the peers, how soldiers knew about the affair but didn't speak up. We analyze the psychology of the group, how the military code failed to prevent the explosion.
Life for Stephen Schaap was a house of mirrors. He lived in a unit where everyone knew his wife was unfaithful except him. This collective deception is a social shocker. It shows how the military code can backfire. The peers protected the secret until it became a grave. Schaap viewed the unit as his accomplice in his ignorance. This institutional betrayal is what fueled his blade. He killed the victim to silence the gossip. The decapitation was a symbolic erasure. He took the head because the head was the site of the deception. This psychological symbolism is a dark signature. It shows a mind that thinks in metaphors of violence. He removed the victim's ability to look at his wife. This jealousy of the dead is what stunned the psychiatrists. He was continuing the war even after the heart stopped beating. He was the executioner of the affair. During the incarceration, he became a pariah. Other inmates avoided him because of the nature of the crime. Even in prison, decapitation is a bridge too far. This social isolation is his permanent reality. He lives in the moment he opened the bag. This temporal trap is his final prison. He is the SGT who lost the stripes and found the steel. He harvested a life for honor, and now he harvests a silence of Leavenworth. Today, Schaap is a static entity in the archives of military crime. He looks at the wall and sees the bedside table. He is a Section 5 entry because he represents the fractured warrior, the man who used the knife to cut the cord of his humanity. He remains a full story of passion and punishment. The victim's legacy and the Army's/Schaap policy. This section looks at the secondary impact, how the Schaap case changed the way the Army handles adultery. We look at the mandatory counseling for domestic disputes in foreign postings. We analyze the community's refusal to forget the hospital room. The full story of Stephen Schaap ends with a warning. The Army spent years analyzing the unit failure. This post-mortem of a marriage is a social shocker. It shows that personal lives are mission critical. He is the reason for family support groups and aggression management in overseas bases. He improved the system by breaking it in the most gory way. This sacrificial lesson is his only legacy. The victim's family moved for a total erasure. They sued for the removal of Schaap's name from all military records. This bureaucratic death is a moral shocker. It shows that shame does not die with the sentence. He is a soldier who never existed, living in a cell that always does. This erasure of the past is his true sentence. He is weighted down by the nothingness of his record. Today, Schaap is a fact of the past. He is the medieval case in a modern world. He is a Section 5 entry because his case defined the limit of human rage. He was a soldier of the blade who cut his way out of society. He harvested the head, and now the head has buried his soul. As we close the full script for U.S. military men who committed shocking crimes, we see the glow of the metals and the rust on the bars. These real characters are the static residents of a system that never forgets. They are the 5 shocking cases revealed, a full history of men who crossed the line and found out the line was made of steel.